Hey, everyone, I'm going to keep looking there. Thank you so much for joining my session and joining us all at Data Left Unattended today in rainy Amsterdam. Today, I'll be talking about importing unstructured data from to SQL Server. My name is Chrissy LeMaire. I am a dual Microsoft MVP and GitHub star, and I'm also a Manning author. I've written about my two favorite things, which is AI and DBA tools. So today we're going to talk about importing data from PDF to SQL Server. And I know ever since the 90s, I have had PDFs and I've wanted to extract that data, get it into a database, but it's so very challenging because whenever you look at it and whenever you try to extract it, you have to take out the text. And sometimes the text doesn't come on over, then you have to use regular expressions, which is very challenging, at least for me. And it's just never been something that was enough for me to pursue until something called structured output came along from OpenAI. And this was very impressive. So whenever you use chat talking to in a box, it's like, how can I actually get that to come back in the exact format that I want? And across the board, it's not just OpenAI, but all models or most models, they do support this thing called structured output. So I went around and I would do these conferences and these blog posts about this thing. And whenever this one came up, I was like, I think that I'm gonna change and recommend something else. But before I do, I want to tell you a little bit more about structured output and ultimately AI integration. What was really shocking to me is that integration, AI, it was always this like black box math. And then whenever I was able to actually integrate it, I was very excited to see that it is just JSON. And further, we have T-SQL, which is so human readable. It's one of the things that first attracted me to SQL Server. But then here's JSON with literally, you can just ask this PDF, what's the name of the pet? What's the name of the pet's owner? And what's the breed? And this was just so revolutionary for me. And from there, I was like, man, I can do so much with this. And I wanted to know, like, how is Microsoft able to allow you to explore your data in the database? And the answer is probably, I haven't looked into it, but it's probably structured output. So I took my favorite database and I asked, any employee birthdays coming up? And I was so excited. It took 45 seconds, but it came back and it said Robert King's birthday is coming up on May 29th. He's a sales representative. And I was a little disappointed because I really was hoping for a bunch of magic, but it turns out I just sent the schema, sent the question, it sent me back a well-formed T-SQL query, and then I presented it back to the model and it interpreted that data. But what's really cool about this is once you can do AI integration, once you can use this JSON, the sky is the limit. Something else that I've always needed as a former SharePoint, sometimes SharePoint professional, is I want to fill in these columns, right? So each of the documents that I work with, they have descriptors, columns. So we have area of law, document type, parties involved. And the first time that I saw this, I was a SQL Server person. Then I saw these columns in SharePoint, and I was so excited. I'm like, everything is required. And then whenever people were filling out, they were just exhausted by all of this required data, including me. So I would save it to my desktop, which defeats the purpose. But then when I learned about structured output, I realized that I could use it to fill in all of this metadata, and I was over the moon about it. And it's the same. It is a human language. And what's also really cool is that you can define it, right? You can say, when I ask you what type of legal document this is, you can only answer with these specific questions. So it's very, very powerful there if you want to massage your data. So I'm not going to go into detail about this, but if you would like, you can go to my blog at netnerds.net, or you can go to gptmaker.dev/json and see the entire JSON file for how I interact with my SharePoint files. And amazingly, this is so exciting. So GitHub gives us code spaces, which is a bunch of compute for free. You don't even have to have a pro account. And with the free account and with the pro account as well, you get access to models on their marketplace. So you can work with all of the models that you hear about, OpenAI, Sonnet, which is really exciting, and see how they differ in their answers and which one is your favorite for which tasks. And it's just wild to me that it's free. But when I was doing this specific conference and I was preparing for it, I knew that I actually wanted to pivot away from structured output and talk to you about agentic AI CLIs, which has just totally changed my life. So CLIs, we have PowerShell modules such as PS OpenAI. That is a wrapper around an API. And then we also have agentic CLIs, and that includes Claude Code, which you might have heard about, Gemini, which is from Google, Codex, which is from OpenAI, and then GitHub's Copilot CLI. And the difference between the two, instead of me just having a very straightforward conversation with just a minimal amount of information, this agentic AI comes with a whole tool set. It has a prompting engine that understands better what you're saying, and file diffs and patching, so you can say, hey, edit that file, instead of actually doing it yourself. If you're using a wrapper, you're going to have to figure out how to use, get content and then slam it into set content. You also have context management. So it knows the directory that you're in. It can go and grab information. It can do a find. It can put all of this together, and it understands more about your project. And it also has workflow orchestration in the background. And with a wrapper, you have to build all of that yourself. So you can build an agentic AI with a wrapper, but you're going to have to do all of this assembly yourself. So the first one that I want to talk about, I'm going to show you, I think, 4 CLIs today. And the first one I want to talk about is the one that absolutely blew me away. I was talking to Andre Common in Dublin, and he was like, Chrissy, have you worked with Claude Code? And I had heard about it, but I was like busy doing, I don't know, it was something else. And he said, it's changed my entire workflow. It is positively amazing. And I'd seen all the buzz, so I finally came around to it, and I started with the $20 Pro, and I was immediately blown away. I couldn't believe it was actually executing commands on my computer. And I got so addicted to it that I went up to the $100 max, which gives you 5 times the amount that the $20 Pro did. And then it took over my entire life. I got completely addicted, and I asked my best friend if he would like to. He's in California. I said, you want to split a max account, which gives us 20 times the amount. So I use it at night, and then he uses it at night, and it's different times of day. So we're pretty much 24/7 on this thing. If you run out, which I actually have, when I was migrating all of our pester tests and DBA tools from V4 to V5, I slammed in so much information, and I had such high quality that I did run out of tokens. At that point, you can use the API, which is the way that you use it with structured output, but it can get extremely expensive. The difference, though, is that whenever you're using these AIs, a lot of times we use a specific pool. But whenever you're using APIs, you have this more powerful pool. But ultimately, I mean, you're going to pay for it, maybe thousands per month. Whenever I was initially using the API, I was trying my best, and I was still hitting 300 a month. And if you're wondering what a CLI looks like, it varies, unfortunately, from tool to tool. And we have here Claude-P, which means prompt. And then you say, refactor this test file from tester v5, and then you pass the name of the file. But I was thinking, oh, actually, never mind. I'll say that at the end. So the next one is OpenAI Codex. So if you have a ChatGPT subscription, you can immediately start using this. And a lot of people really love it. It has a similar price plan, the $20 Plus and the $200 Pro. I never use OpenAI models to code. I've tried it because some people are able to craft their prompts in a way that it actually works for them. But I think it's just too much work for me. I get so frustrated with the output. And further, I do want to say this about Claude Code. Every single one of the top AI companies are using Claude Code to code their own tools. And the reason that we know this is that Anthropic is actually banning them across the board, and OpenAI is one of those companies. So they aren't even eating their own dog food in that way. But what's really nice is that a lot of us already have a ChatGPT subscription, so we have access to this command line. And you'll notice, so before it was Claude-P, now it's Codex exec. You pass this, by the way, very poor prompt. It's not defined enough, but it has that slightly different format. Google Gemini, I've been very impressed by Google Gemini's most recent models. I've actually canceled my ChatGPT subscription. I never thought I would say that. And now I am using Google Gemini. And with that comes the CLI. And the price point is weirdly different. So you can pay $20 a month for advanced and then $250 for deep think. But what's really great is that I actually use it whenever I run out of credits with Copilot or with Claude Code. I love using Gemini's free 50 calls a day. That's a lot of calls. And they have, and it's the second best coder, much higher than OpenAI. This is what it looks like. Yet another, this is so non-standard. So you say Gemini, and then you pass this. There's no P, there's no exec, and then you also have to throw that @ there to start including your files. This is my second favorite CLI, GitHub Copilot. I'm actually very surprised, and the reason is because whenever Copilot first came out, you could tell that there was a lot of context management. So when you're working with Claude, you can tell that it read your entire document, but Copilot is just reading less somehow, so it did less. But what's been amazing over time is that there are some times when you want it to read just a very specific amount and do a very specific thing, such as I was going through DBA tools and changing all of the T-SQL from, we all use case insensitive whenever we're developing, and people with case sensitive systems, they had problems. And so I want to go through all of DBA tools and fix this. And Claude Code was like, you are not giving me enough work, so I'm just going to invent it. But Copilot said, this is a perfect amount of work. I understand exactly what you want. And that's what I ended up using. So the $10 Pro model is totally awesome. But the $40 Pro Plus comes with 1,500 calls. And it starts at the beginning of each month. And honestly, on the first of each month, I'm super pumped to do some giant batch with my PowerShell tool set. Sometimes I go through each of the recipes on my recipe website and I fix up a couple things. Other times I will work with DBA tools and we have 700 commands, so I can pass through them twice. So I really love having the GitHub Copilot CLI. But again, we see, here's another one, Copilot-prompt rewrite this, and this one you can't even explicitly pass in the file name. You have to include it in the prompt, which is strange to me. Actually, that has changed. Everything has changed. As a matter of fact, I have changed this very presentation up until this morning, and we'll go through that in the demo, but it's been shocking and awesome. So you can actually attach it now, and each way it does work. It's very context aware. Ultimately, though, what I wanted something that was standardized, that I could say dash prompt. I could specify the tool that I wanted, Claude, Copilot, Gemini, and I didn't have to learn each of the parameters. I can just say dash prompt, dash context, and it's the same across the board. So I wrote AI tools. And what's so funny, so this very command that I'm using as an example, here we're taking this immunization PDF and we're converting it to an image, because in the old days, it was impossible, or it was very hard to, whenever you were using the API and structured output, it couldn't read a PDF. It needed a tool, right? It needed to convert it somehow. But if you sent an image, then it could totally work with it. It turns out you don't even need to do that anymore. So I wrote this command, convert to AIT image, explicitly for this session. And by the time that I was done with it, it turns out I didn't need it anyway. So that is one of the pivots, one of the 4 pivots that I've done in this very session. So you might be saying, Chrissy, you can write to your disk, you can do all of these things. What about the safety? Each of these out the box, very irritating. It prompts you over and over again. And I see why, like, humans do need to be in the middle with AI. And each of them, again, have different non-standard ways to bypass their safety measures. Gemini made me laugh with the YOLO, but honestly, Copilot is more my style, which is the allow all tools. So I want to talk about context. We've heard a lot about prompt engineering, but whenever you're working, this is across the board. This is whenever you're converting PDFs. This is when you're converting pester tests or recipes. You have to manage the context. So instead of doing prompt engineering, if you become a great context manager, that's where you'll really succeed with AI. And when you have long interactive sessions and you're talking back and forth to ChatGPT or Claude, you might notice that over time, it becomes worse and worse at coding. The code output quality just tanks, very frustrating. But what's really great, when you use non-interactive CLIs, it stays 100% the entire time, right? So you pipe in this file and you give it a prompt, fix this, and then it quits. So it fixes it, then it quits. And you start that over and over again, and your quality stays at 100%. But I will say this uses a ton of tokens, and this is how I was able to exceed my $200 per month 20x, and you just have to wait 5 hours, so it's not a huge deal. But this, whenever quality is very important to you, then you will want to use non-interactive CLI prompts. And when it comes to context, we were talking earlier about wrapper versus agentic CLI. With wrappers, you're starting out with, you can use every single thing there, but again, you're going to build your tools in. With agentic CLIs, just right off the top, it already has a ton of context already in there. And we have tool calls. So tool calls will allow you to call PowerShell or Bash or learn how to read a PDF, which I'm super excited about. Just made everything so much easier. But that does take off right off the bat. You'll hear, oh, there's a million token context, and a token, 75% of a word, give or take. So you do have to consider this 30% usage whenever you're using agentic CLIs. So with that said, let's do a demo. This demo, by the way, changed like just 20 minutes ago whenever I realized that I didn't need to convert that anymore. So let's take a look. One moment. Okay. I was originally going to do this in a very beautiful notebook, but notebook plus AI plus PowerShell, it just doesn't work well. So what I'm going to do is copy paste into a Claude Code session. So Claude Code can be used. It's a CLI, but this CLI can be wrapped by a PowerShell wrapper, such as AI tools, or it can be wrapped by a Visual Studio Code extension, which is what we are using here. Let me make it just a little bit bigger. You can see here right out the gate, I'm just bypassing permissions. And a lot of times what I'll do is I will run Claude Code in a container because it can, and it has deleted people's entire home directories. And so what you want to do is if you are, YOLOing all of your vibe codes, then I can't believe I said that, then you will want to contain all of that. But I'm actually YOLOing a lab machine, so it's not a big deal. I am not in a container. Let's cross our fingers. So let's look at the demo. Oof, because I made it bigger. All right, so I'm talking about the evolution. This was actually the old way from literally earlier today before I decided to pivot yet again and show you the interface. One of the reasons is because whenever it's doing all the thinking in the background, I was just watching the time go by in notebooks and it was very boring. And what I realized is that as Claude is showing you how it thinks, it's way more entertaining. So I'll show you all how it is that I work with it. Before we begin, I would like to show you the PDF that we are going to be working with. So as a database person, you look at this and you're like, all right, I can see already that I need to get the dog's name, and we have the information or data available is the date of birth and the gender, etc., the owner's name. And then also what I want here, I don't care about that schedule. So it'd be really nice if AI ignored it. What I want out of this is the immunization dates. Maybe I also want to see, I want to know if the vet has actually signed this. And that's all things that you couldn't get before when you're manually parsing, but you can get it now from AI. So what we want is for this to be in a database. So you can imagine if you're doing this with structured output, just sending your PDF, sending the structured output, getting it back, sticking it in the database, very formal, surprisingly rigid now that we have different ways to do it that I just never imagined a couple years ago. So whenever I was designing this new demo, I thought, I'm going to show them how to do a CLI. But what I'm going to do is use the CLI to extract the structured output to then put into the database. And then I was like, well, then what's the point? And the point is when you're using the API, it can be very expensive. But whenever you're using these other tools, really the price that you pay is, yes, it's $20 a month, but it's also time. And makes it cheaper in the end. You kind of exchange that price for you sitting around waiting for your timer to reset. And I was like, that's not super compelling. And so I actually talked to Claude and I was like, I know intuitively that I want to use the CLI, but why? And I was like, Chrissy, instead of you doing all the work designing the database, just let me do it. And I can understand your PDF. I can understand your entire project. And I was like, oh my God, that's true. That's awesome. And so what we have is this design prompt. And a lot of times prompts, it's not just that little thing that we saw, convert this from Pester v4 to Pester v5. I thought it could be as simple as that. And maybe in the future it will be. But right now you have to be very explicit about what you want. I never write these myself. I just talk to Claude. And further, it's never right the first time, which is actually kind of scary when you're doing a demo and you don't have time to perfect it. this is something that me and Claude busted out in a short period of time, and I had just a short period of time to actually test it. So it may not be perfect, but it can definitely get there. So when I first created the demo, I was taking this PDF, converting it to a PNG file, very high quality, very nice. I could pick the pages that I wanted to export. And then I would say, review this. And it was taking a long time. It was kind of boring. And I ended up just copy and pasting. And I was wondering, can Claude actually read a PDF yet? So I executed it. And this is so much. So we're just going to sit back and watch this happen. Oh my God, look. Okay, so it's reading it. That's one of the tool calls, right? It already has a clear picture of the data. That's so much faster than doing it the other way. So now it's doing normalization. I used the word best practices. You always want to use that. It genuinely improves the output. So it's going through, and look at that. It took this PDF and it's making this pets table. It's setting the indexes. It's doing the immunizations and so on. And then, oh, it executed it. So let's see. And it's there. Awesome. And that's really nice too, right? So it went and it did it. Did I tell it to do it though? I thought that I didn't for the first one. Let's go and check. Let's see. Execute only the DDL. That's what it was. So it did go. It didn't insert the data. I only wanted it to create the tables. And then we can go and prove it to ourselves here. And now we have immunization and pets. It is interesting. So that's what I had actually decided on whenever I was doing my my sessions before. But I have seen different iterations, and it varies. But at least this just gets you going. And a lot of times that's what you want. You just want to get the data and you just want to get it in the database. So we go back here. So that was awesome. I mean, it just does all of the work for you. And then it goes through and it checks the work as well. So now the schema can store Chewy's record, etc. Just phenomenal. So very cool. I love this. And much faster than doing it the way that I was doing it. So now so ETL has always been really annoying, right? You have to do so much with the data. It's very rarely perfect, which drives me crazy. But what we want to do here is that I'm just going to extract the data exactly as is. When we look at Chewy, it actually says that Chewy is a Labrador, and Chewy is clearly not. And I used to be kind of embarrassed whenever I was doing this presentation. I was like, oh man, I really have to excuse this bad data. It was something that I downloaded from the internet based off of a real life requirement. We had vaccination records that we needed to put into SharePoint. And so I went and I found a random vaccination. But then whenever I saw that, the Labrador, I was like, man, that needs to be changed. Guess what? Now with Claude Code, it's so easy. You just say like, check the data and fix the breed, and it can literally see the picture of Chewy and fix the breed. So the first thing that we're going to do is extract it exactly as is. I do have to keep repeating it. Well, if I continued this session, I wouldn't have to keep telling it about TempDB. And session management is extremely important. It is something that you pick up over time. Sometimes, and you also have to compare. Sometimes you make a plan. This plan mode here, when we go through here, is invaluable. And now I always start with, I pretty much always start with the plan and then execute it. But that does fill up the context. Now, I could paste this in without any of the SQL Server, and it'll know where to go, right? It has that context, but I'm just gonna, I don't know. Let's see, I think I'm just gonna start a new one. So I'm gonna do a clear, and then extract all the data from immunization.md. The reason that I put MD here instead of the PDF is because it was taking so long with my own tools and the way that I was doing it, that I didn't want to bore everyone. And this is a lot faster. But you know, I don't know if there's like, I wonder if I could, let's just like vibe this and say, extract the data from the immunization PDF. I don't know where it's at. I have vaccine tables in TempDB on localhost. Figure out the structure, insert the data from the PDF, and show me what you inserted. That is awesome if Claude does it well. So let's try it. All right, I'll help you do this. I went for the MD. I see that there's a pets and an immunization. I mean, this is super cool. This is logging into my SQL Server database, which is at first what I thought that it would be doing. But then, you know, I was sending the schema. So now I don't have to do any of that. Now this is like the magic is truly coming in. So we're watching it. I mean, and also whenever you have two tables and you're inserting, you have to create the pet first and then make sure that it's the vaccination record. And I just don't even have to care anymore. I can just tell it to go and do all of that for me, and it does it. So man, so cool. Here we go. Let's go and look at it. And then we're going to go to immunizations. And there is the data from the PDF to SQL Server. Now, I will say this does require a human in the middle. That is one of the things that I've always needed someone to review. I get really excited and I jump right into it. And usually a lot of times, if something's very important, I will ask Claudio Silva to please look over my code and my work. But you know, this looks good enough, probably. I like that, yeah. I think I'll call this a success and then ask Claudio to check it later. All right, so next up. Yeah, notice anything wrong? So there is something wrong, right? There's the embarrassing thing where it called it a Labrador. So we could see if we could actually fix it. Now, before I was doing this free-form text, and it's kind of ugly, most of my work is done in a markdown file, and I'll keep them in my repo because I reuse them. And so let's go look at unattended.md. Review the PDF carefully for data quality concerns. I've already imported the data exactly as shown in the PDF into TempDB tables. Look it up on localhost using Windows credentials. Now I need you to analyze it for inconsistencies, errors. These are all the things that we used to do. And then generate the T-SQL update statements and then list all of the data inconsistencies. So let's go ahead and copy this. And I'm gonna clear it. I don't think I've tried this one. So if not, we could just fix it. Now we chill. So it's getting that structure. These are all things that we were going to have to do ourselves. And we just sit back. And the official term for what I'm doing right now, just drinking my water and watching this, is vibing. As a matter of fact, Linus Torvalds just put in some vibed code to the Linux kernel. And that is very exciting because that is a huge endorsement. And he said it did it better than he could have done, which meant this is usually, I'm terrible at T-SQL design. This does a much better job usually. Look at that. Oh my God. All right. So this is very exciting because it saw that there was the breed mismatch. I didn't even notice the color. Like, this is super cool. It also, I had heard from previous sessions that the data sequences were wrong. Oh, and check it out, a spelling error. This is extremely exciting. This is why I love Claude Code. And if you aren't using it, Claude Code is really the best for this type of vibing. And but whenever you are executing very specific tasks, I would say Copilot CLI is my favorite in general. And I'll show you some of the real world examples. What I really love about this session and about this whole understanding AI is once you can do it with a PDF very well, it can be applied to so many things. I've vibe coded this lab. This was created, I created a PowerShell module and then made this huge network in 15 minutes because this machine I'm on is an awesome monster. But also one of my favorite things is, I love this, I did that in ChatGPT. If we go here, one of my favorite vibes in the world for my entire life, this is my recipe website called realcajunrecipes.com. If you are not in America, then you do not get any ads, so it's even prettier. Which I was able to do using vibing. I said, hey, I don't want to show any, because most of the traffic comes from America, and I was like, outside of it, don't worry about ads. They only bring in like $1. So show them real nice stuff. And then when I show my friends like Ben, then I don't have to be embarrassed that there's a bunch of ads everywhere. Although I did restrict the ads because I vibed it and it was so easy. But ultimately, the thing that I'm most excited about is this. I was able to translate my entire site from English to French and Quebecois. And the way that I did that was with just take each file, and then I have a prompt that's very detailed. I didn't just say translate it to French. I gave it a glossary, which is some context, right? I was like, use some of our Cajun French words, and then it went through file by file, and it kept the tone that I wanted. It was so impressive. I even had I went to a famous Quebecois recipe website, and I asked Claude to evaluate the tone of that site and the words that they use, how casual it is. And then further, this is important. A lot of times, so now I live in the Netherlands, and whenever I'm asked it to translate, if I don't do it right, it'll actually write back in Dutch. And it occurred to me that the best way to give the engine instructions is in the language that you want to write. And so my instructions for this is in French. And for the Quebecois, it's also written in Quebecois. If you're curious about Cajun French, just as an aside, it also helped me write this, that we don't offer Cajun French translations because it is an oral language, because we did not write it down for various terrible reasons that you can read about on my website. So that was one of the things that I vibe coded. If you go to my blog, you can also see other ways to apply this, like I was talking about earlier with case sensitivity. You could reuse your ChatGPT subscription to update your blog. So my blog goes back to 2006, and there's some outdated websites, some links there. There's outdated references and methods. And so I didn't want it to change what I was saying, but I did want to give it updates. And I put it out there, and there was a member of the SQL Server community who was like, I really didn't want to do this at first because this is my language. And then whenever she read the prompt, she was like, oh, that really makes sense. So if you want to update your website, if you speak a different language, like Welsh, Justin Bird was really excited whenever he saw Real Cajun Recipes, because he was like, wait, I can translate my entire blog to Welsh and have that bilingually. So that's really cool. If you have a commercial product, you can also use it for that too, if you want to introduce localization. So back here, back to the PDF, you can also do data quality reports, etc. You can use AI tool, sort of like ETLs. It is slower because we're slamming in so much information, but you just, like an ETL, you leave it running overnight and it's not a big deal. So ultimately, the point is that I used to teach this really rigid schema definition, and sometimes it is appropriate, right? And then I would configure the structured output API and do all of this validation, but now we just throw it into Claude and it does all of that. Just say it, say what you need it to do. And yeah, Claude even made me realize, whoa, I'm doing it the hard way. I'm using the CLI to extract the structured output to create the DBA tools command. I don't need to do any of that. I could have told it to use DBA tools. You could tell it which tools you want it to use. But yeah, it could be as simple as this. And yeah, so, and that's another thing, is that AI really thinks of a lot of things that maybe I feel or that I kind of know, but it's able to articulate that. Yeah, and it has a semantic understanding, which is so exciting. Whenever we're doing, the SED and the awk and the regex and all of that, it can't see that picture of Chewy. That's clearly not a Labrador, so that's really exciting. Edge cases, God, messy data drives me crazy, and now it drives me less crazy because it does adapt to messy data and can fix it. Yeah, and it, documents the concerns for you to review at a later time. And so I hope that you enjoyed this topic and that you are as excited to use Claude Code and other agentic CLIs. If you have any questions, I would love to entertain them. And if you don't, and I have time, I actually, how long is this? Is it 45 minutes? 60? Okay. So I would love to tell you about and show you different things that you can do with this newly acquired skill. But I am curious about the audience out there. Is it possible that we would be able to
Can come off.
oh, they can't.
Chat.
Okay, all righty. The things that I wanted to know is if you could get in touch with me, perhaps on LinkedIn. Are you using this Claude Code or any sort of agentic CLI? If so, what is your favorite? And what topics or what things are you doing with your CLIs? I would like to give you a little tour of other thhave that I am doing as well. So we went over the Real Cajun Recipes language, but what I'm going to do is have my lab that I'm working on. If we go here, oh, the PDF to image, that was something that I wrote in, let me see, okay, that's fine. That was something that I actually wrote in Go. And let's see, WordPress, though this is whenever I went WordPress to Hugo, which is extremely interesting also. If this works, no, I don't, am I on the right one? I might not be. No, I'm on the wrong server. But you can literally now, instead of having to remember all of the different commands in Linux, what I'll do is I will just remotely log in to my Linux servers, and I'll say, hey, I have a WordPress site, Real Cajun Recipes. Can you please extract all of the data and put it into markdown files? I don't have to figure out the username and password for MySQL. It does it automatically for me. It's been it's allowed me to make all of my dreams come true with even DBA tools. So previously, I had it on what was it? It was WordPress, and it always got hacked, drove me crazy. And I used Claude to extract all of our old blog posts. As a matter of fact, our site had kind of been unwritable for a while, so I started doing it. I started writing posts on my own blog, and I just said, go to my blog, find DBA tools posts, and then put them on the website instead. And then also look at this. I am not a web designer. I do development, and I know it's pretty, but I don't do all of this. And it turns out that I don't even have to learn CSS anymore. This is beautiful. It's Tailwind and SQL, and Claude designed all of this for me. So I could just tell it, like, I want this to work, and I want this filter to work, and I want it to be beautiful. And hey, that doesn't look right. It's very rare that we'll get it on the first time, but I do have conversations with it. And it's just, even small things like with the team, I wanted to make sure that I didn't appear to favor any specific maintainer. And so I said, all right, so put me first as the creator, but whenever you go and you refresh, then you'll see that each of the positions change and it's very randomized. So it's just for somebody who is a perfectionist and who loves like the little things, this has been such a joy to use. And I do want to show you, if you're curious, the length of two of my prompts. One of them is publicly available. So if we go to AI tools and then prompts. So we have, whenever I was migrating, I started with that short little, please migrate from V4 to V5. And it turns out that wasn't nearly adequate. What I needed was, so first I needed to say, here's the file. And then I did a find and replace with the file path because I wanted to do this in a loop. And then I had the command name and the parameters. This is the first prompt. Then I need to pass it context. I need to say, look, with DBA tools, we write a very specific way. And I need you to follow all of that. So it might disconnect. If so, I'm going to go to the local one. All righty. Just going to go here. Let's see, AI tools. Oh, sorry. AI tools. Sorry, I had to change because I do love to RDP into my my remote servers, and sometimes that happens. So here we are. Oh, it's just in general that the internet is a smidge slow. Are you getting that problem too, Ben? Okay, good. Alrighty. Okay, so now we go to the style, and we look at all of this style. So you could see how it would be impossible to stuff all of this into the memory or the context, and then have a long conversation about it. This is just filling it up and up and up and up. I wrote this with Claude. It's nothing to be scared of. And then further, now that's just the DBA tool style. Now, we also need what happens when you migrate from V4 to V5. I have all of these rules. So I will say, hey, Claude, go look up best practices. Go look up a migration guide, and then apply it to DBA tools and help me create a prompt. So we go through, and this is the prompt for that. And then since I'm logged in, I'll also show you the prompts that I used for the Cajun recipe site. It's going to be similarly large. So we have, I have the French Canadian and the French localization. And this is the one that is written in French, so that it just keeps going, but very long prompts. So don't be afraid to be clearly very, 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 very specific.
How specific?
Very, very. And I have one more prompt that I would like to show you now in all of my repos when I'm actively working on them. Data plat, DBA tools. I am going to have a Claude.md, and this gives it, because now Claude is actually responding to our pull requests and issues whenever I call on it. Whenever it writes a command, and Claude has contributed a lot to DBA tools, whenever it writes a command, I need it to follow all of our syntax rules. And so, oh man, it loves backticks, drives me absolutely crazy. And so we could see here that it follows, or I created, listen, we want to support as old as SQL Server 2000 if it's possible. So try it. If it doesn't work out, then, skip it gracefully. And then I tell it how to do that. We tell it how to use the pipeline. And it's really exciting every time that I have to create a new Claude, I don't do it by, they have like an init. I don't use the init because it's not specific enough for me. But whenever I remember that I don't have to retype all of these prompts, I really like the way that all of it works. So I actually thought that we were going to have questions. That is my bad, and I shall conclude now. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, I love talking about this. I'm super addicted to all of these tools. And what's really great is that the more that you use it, the more that you see opportunities to use it, personal life and at work as well. So I would say go forth and convert some PDFs to SQL Server.